She walked in on her husband's promotion party, but realized it was actually his wedding. Elena's hands shook as she fumbled with her keys at the front door. The 12-hour shift at the hospital had drained every ounce of energy from her body, but she'd pushed through because that's what she always did. Push through. Keep going. Make it work. As she finally got the door open, she could hear music coming from somewhere nearby. Loud music. Celebration music. She lived in a quiet neighborhood where the loudest sound was usually Mrs. Peterson's dog barking at the mailman. This was different. This was live music, laughter, voices raised in joy. Elena rubbed her tired eyes and stepped outside to see where it was coming from. The sound led her down the street to the community center, the same building where Marcus and I had talked about maybe having our own wedding reception someday when they could afford it. The parking lot was packed with expensive cars, luxury sedans, and SUVs that definitely didn't belong to anyone from our neighborhood. Elena felt her stomach twist. Marcus had mentioned some big company event tonight, something about celebrating his promotion at the consulting firm. He'd been vague about the details, said it would be boring, mostly older executives and their wives. He'd actually seemed relieved when she said she couldn't make it because of her shift schedule. But this didn't look boring. This looked like the kind of celebration people remembered for years. Elena walked closer, drawn by curiosity and something else she couldn't name. Through the large windows, she could see people dancing, elegant women in expensive dresses, men in tailored suits. Everyone looked happy, radiant even, the kind of happiness that comes with big announcements and life-changing moments. She was about to turn around and go home when she saw him. Marcus stood at the front of the room, but he wasn't wearing his usual work clothes. He was dressed in a black tuxedo she'd never seen before, and he was holding hands with a woman in a flowing white dress, a wedding dress. Elena's legs stopped working. She pressed her face against the window, sure she was seeing things wrong. The exhaustion from her shift must be making her hallucinate. But no, it was definitely Marcus. The same Marcus who had kissed her goodbye that morning and promised to call her during her break. The same Marcus who had been sharing her bed, her life, her dreams for the past 3 years. The woman beside him was beautiful in that untouchable way that came with money and privilege. Young, probably mid-20s, with perfect teeth and the kind of dress that cost more than Elena made in 6 months. She was glowing the way brides were supposed to glow, looking up at Marcus like he was her whole world. Elena's chest felt like it was caving in. She couldn't breathe right. This had to be some kind of mistake, some kind of sick joke. Maybe it was a company event with some kind of theme. Maybe they were acting out something for entertainment. But then Marcus leaned down and kissed the woman, and the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Someone called out, "Congratulations to the happy couple!" and Elena felt the world tilt sideways. She pushed through the main doors, her hospital badge still clipped to her scrubs, her hair still pulled back in the messy bun she'd worn for 12 hours straight. People turned to look at her, their faces shifting from curiosity to confusion to something that looked like pity. Elena walked through the crowd like she was underwater, everything muffled and strange. She could see people whispering, pointing, but she couldn't hear what they were saying over the rushing sound in her ears. Marcus saw her when she was about 10 feet away. His face went completely white, and he actually took a step backward. The woman in the wedding dress followed his gaze and looked at Elena with genuine confusion. "Marcus." Elena's voice came out smaller than she intended. "What's going on?" The music stopped. The dancing stopped. Everyone in the room turned to stare at the woman in hospital scrubs who had just walked into what was clearly a wedding reception. "Elena," Marcus said, and his voice cracked on her name. "You're supposed to be at work." "I was at work. My shift just ended." She looked around the room, taking in all the details she'd missed in her shock. Wedding decorations, a 3-tiered cake with a bride and groom on top, wedding favors on every table. "Marcus? Whose wedding is this?" The woman in white stepped forward. She had a kind face, Elena noticed, the sort of face that belonged to someone who'd never had to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. "I'm sorry, but who are you?" the woman asked, not unkindly. Elena almost laughed. The sound came out harsh and broken. "I'm his girlfriend. I'm Elena. We've been together for 3 years. We live together." The woman's face crumpled. She turned to Marcus with such raw betrayal that Elena almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "You said you were single. You said you'd never been in a serious relationship." Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked like a man who'd been caught in a lie so big he couldn't even begin to explain it away. Elena felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. "How long have you been planning this?" "Elena, please." Marcus finally found his voice. "Let me explain. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like you're married to someone else. It looks like you've been lying to me for months, maybe years. It looks like I've been working double shifts to help pay for our life together while you've been building a different life with someone else." The woman in the wedding dress was crying now, her perfect makeup running in black streaks. "I didn't know," she said to Elena. "I swear I didn't know about you." Elena believed her. She recognized that particular brand of shock and pain. An older man in an expensive suit, probably the bride's father, stepped forward. "What is the meaning of this? Marcus, you told us you were available, that there were no complications." "There aren't any complications," Marcus said quickly. "Elena and we're just friends. She's confused." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. After 3 years of sharing everything, of building what she thought was a life together, she was suddenly just a confused friend. Friends don't split rent. Friends don't share a bed every night. Friends don't talk about having children together someday. She pulled out her phone and showed the recent photos, pictures of her and Marcus at Christmas, at her birthday dinner last month, at the hospital fundraiser where he'd proudly introduced her as his girlfriend to her coworkers. The bride's father looked at the photos, then at Marcus, his face growing darker with each passing second. "You lied to us. You lied to my daughter." "Sir, I can explain," Marcus started, but the older man cut him off. "Explain what? That you've been living with one woman while courting my daughter? That you've been taking money from both of them? Because yes, young man, I know about the loan my daughter gave you for your business venture." Elena felt sick. Marcus had asked her for money 6 months ago, said it was for a business opportunity that would set them up for life. She'd emptied her savings account without question. "You used my money to court her," Elena said, the pieces finally falling into place. "You used my money to pay for dates with her, gifts for her, probably even this wedding." The silence in the room was deafening. Elena could see the horror on people's faces as they realized what had happened. This wasn't just infidelity. This was calculated, deliberate fraud. The bride pulled off her wedding ring and threw it at Marcus. "Get away from me," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "Get away from all of us." Elena watched Marcus try to salvage the situation, watched him scramble for explanations and excuses, but she wasn't listening anymore. She was thinking about all the nights she'd worked extra shifts so he could focus on his business meetings, all the time she'd eaten ramen noodles so he could take clients out to expensive dinners, all the time she'd made herself smaller so he could seem bigger. "Elena," Marcus tried one more time, "please don't do this. These people are important for my career." And there it was. Even now, caught in the middle of his lies, he was more worried about his career than about the women he had hurt. Elena looked around the room one more time. She saw pity in some faces, anger in others, but mostly she saw people who had just learned what kind of man they'd been celebrating, what kind of man the bride's family had just welcomed into their lives. "I hope you get everything you deserve," Elena said to Marcus. Then she turned to the bride. "I'm sorry this happened to both of us. You seem like a good person. You deserve better than this." Elena walked out of the community center with her head high, but she didn't make it to her car before the tears started. She sat in the parking lot for a long time, crying for the 3 years she'd lost, for the man she'd thought she knew, for the future she'd been planning that never really existed. When the tears finally stopped, she drove home to the apartment she'd been sharing with Marcus. Their apartment. Except it had never really been theirs, had it?
It had been hers. She'd been paying most of the rent, most of the utilities, most of the groceries. She'd been supporting his dreams.
Elena spent the night packing Marcus's things. She folded his clothes carefully, not because he deserved it, but because she needed to know she was handling this with dignity. She found a box of wedding invitations in his desk drawer, beautiful ivory cards announcing his marriage to someone else. The wedding had been planned for months. She also found bank statements showing regular deposits from someone with the same last name as the bride. The woman's family had been supporting Marcus financially, probably had been for months. Elena's own bank statements showed a different story. Money flowing out to support a man who had been using her as a convenience while he built a real life with someone else. By morning, Marcus's belongings were packed and waiting by the door. Elena called in sick to work, the first time she'd done that in over a year, and spent the day changing locks and canceling the credit cards Marcus had access to. He showed up that evening, looking haggard and desperate. "Elena, please, we need to talk about this." "We really don't," she said through the chain lock she'd installed. "Your things are in the hallway. I left them with the building manager." "You don't understand the pressure I was under," Marcus said. "Her family has connections. This marriage would have opened doors for both of us." "Both of us?" Elena almost laughed. "Marcus, you married someone else. There is no both of us." "The marriage isn't legal," he said desperately. "We never filed the paperwork. I was going to tell you everything. I just needed time to figure out how." Elena stared at him through the crack in the door. Even now, caught and exposed, he was still lying, still trying to manipulate the situation to his advantage. "It doesn't matter," she said. "Legal or not, you made a choice. You chose to lie to me for months. You chose to take my money to pay for your relationship with someone else. You chose to make me believe I was building a life with you, while you were actually building a life without me." "I love you," Marcus said, and for the first time, he sounded like he might actually mean it. "No, you don't," Elena replied. "You love what I did for you. You love having someone who asked for nothing and gave everything. You love having someone who made your life easier while asking nothing in return. But you don't love me, Marcus. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been able to do this." She closed the door and turned off the lights. Marcus knocked for another hour, but Elena didn't answer. She had said everything she needed to say. 3 months later, Elena was sitting in a coffee shop near the hospital when she saw the bride from that awful night. The woman looked different without the wedding dress and professional makeup. Younger, more tired, but also somehow more real. They made eye contact, and after a moment of awkward recognition, the woman walked over. "I'm Sarah," she said. "I never properly introduced myself that night." "Elena, and you don't need to apologize for anything. You were lied to just as much as I was." Sarah sat down across from her. "I wanted to thank you, actually, for telling the truth that night. I know it couldn't have been easy." Elena stirred her coffee, thinking about that night. It wasn't, but it was necessary. "I found out later that he'd been seeing other women too," Sarah said. "Not just you. There were at least 2 others that I know of. My father had him investigated after the wedding disaster." I wasn't surprised, but it still stung. "I'm sorry," Sarah said. "Don't be. I'm glad I found out before it was too late, before I was really married to him." She paused. "Are you okay? I mean, really okay?" Elena considered the question. Was she okay? She was lonely sometimes, living alone after 3 years of shared space and shared routines. She was working more shifts to make up for the financial hit of losing Marcus's minimal contributions to our expenses. She was starting over at 32, which felt both terrifying and liberating. "I'm better than okay," Elena said, and realized she meant it. "I'm free. For the first time in years, I'm making choices based on what I want, not what someone else needs from me." "What do you want?" Sarah asked. Elena smiled. "I want to go back to school. I want to become a nurse practitioner. I want to travel somewhere I've never been. I want to date someone who actually wants to be seen with me in public. I want to matter to someone the way they matter to me." "Those sound like good things to want," Sarah said. "They are. And for the first time, I believe I actually deserve them." They talked for another hour, two women who had been collateral damage in one man's selfish choices but had found their way to something better. Sarah was going back to graduate school, studying social work. She wanted to help other women who found themselves in situations like theirs. As they parted ways, Sarah asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't walked in that night?" Elena thought about it. "I think I would have figured it out eventually. The truth has a way of coming out. But I'm glad it happened the way it did. I'm glad I saw everything at once instead of discovering it piece by piece over years." "Any regrets?" Sarah asked. Elena shook her head. "Only that I didn't value myself enough to leave sooner. But I can't change the past. I can only choose what happens next." A year later, Elena was accepted into a nurse practitioner program at a university 3 states away. She'd saved enough money for the move and the first year's tuition, money that was entirely hers because she wasn't supporting anyone else's dreams anymore. On her last day at the hospital, her supervisor pulled her aside. "We're going to miss you," Dr. Patterson said. "You're one of the best nurses we've ever had. Always reliable, always compassionate, always willing to go the extra mile." "Thank you," Elena said. "This place taught me a lot about taking care of people. Now I need to learn how to take care of myself." "You're going to do great things," Dr. Patterson said. "I can tell. You have that quiet strength that changes the world one person at a time." Elena packed her car with everything she owned, which wasn't much, but was entirely hers. As she drove away from the city where she had lost herself and then found herself again, she thought about the woman who had walked into that community center a year ago. That woman had been tired, overworked, and convinced that love meant sacrifice. She believed that being a good partner meant asking for nothing and giving everything, that being worthy of love meant being useful. The woman driving toward a new life understood that love should be a partnership, not a transaction. That the right person would want to support her dreams, not just benefit from her sacrifices. That she deserved to be chosen, not settled for. Elena's phone buzzed with a text from David, a resident she'd met during her last month at the hospital. They'd been dating for 3 months, taking it slow, building something based on honesty and mutual respect rather than need and convenience. "Drive safely," his message read. "Can't wait to visit you once you're settled. I'm proud of you for chasing your dreams." Elena pulled over to text back. "Thank you for believing in me. See you soon." She walked in on what she thought was her boyfriend's promotion party and discovered it was actually his wedding to someone else. But what she'd really discovered was her own strength, her own worth, her own capacity for building a life that was truly hers. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but for the first time in years, Elena was excited about where it might lead. She was finally living for herself, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. And that's the end of today's story, my precious listener. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if it were to be you? Until next time, stay strong. Love you for real. Bye!